So I got a lovely comment from Ava Carl asking me how much it costs to camp at a park that was in a previous video. And so I thought I'd actually make an entire video out of this because I haven't done it in a while, and just go through all the different types of campgrounds in Washington and how much they cost. And if you want to check out another really good car life channel, check out Ava's channel. I'll put her link in the description below. She's been at this for a lot shorter time than I have, but her channel's already way bigger than mine. So it's a great channel. Go check it out over there. A lot of you have been asking exactly how much debt I have, and it is quite a lot. So what I'm thinking about doing is putting the total amount of debt I have at the beginning of every video. That way you guys can watch as my debt slowly disappears. Well, though hopefully maybe that becomes quickly disappears at some point, but it'll entertain you either way. I've had a lot of people asking me lately about campgrounds and how much they cost and what they look like. So this video I'm going to go over all the basic campgrounds that we have here in Washington State, and I'll show you what they look like and how much they cost. So the first basic type of campground is the State Forest Campground, and these are really convenient because they're free. I should say they're free with a Discover Pass. The Discover Pass costs I think about $45 a year is what it is right now, and it's a complete bargain if you go camping regularly. There aren't a lot of state forests, but the State Forests and Department of Fish and Wildlife both run campgrounds in both Western and Eastern Washington. There aren't a ton of them, but they're often fairly large. Obviously, like I mentioned before, free, and the only amenity that they usually have is a pit toilet, or this particular one has lots of places for tying up your horse. So if you're into horses, this is a great place to come. Next up is the National Forest, and I'll show you what's available up there. National forests tend to be a little bit further away from civilization, just due to their nature of being in a national forest, but they have really good options depending on the time of year. So let me show you what they have. So here we are going down a Forest Service road, and I'll show you some of the potential places you can camp out in the forest here. So one of the things you may notice is that this road is kind of rough, so it's one thing you have to be aware of. It's actually one of the reasons why I got this car, is because it has good enough ground clearance that I don't scrape anything. And also, this time of year is not such a problem, but during the spring and fall, these roads can get really slippery with mud and stuff, and so having all-wheel drive actually helps a lot in those cases. I'm not saying you can't do it with two-wheel drive, but especially if you're working by yourself, this is a lot safer in a all-wheel drive vehicle. The other thing you may notice is that obviously you can't just pull off into the forest out here. On both sides you have steep hill, and even if you could pull off, there's dense underbrush on either side of the road, and that's pretty normal for forest roads in Washington State, at least on the western half of the mountains. So around here, that's what turnouts look like. I mean, you can pull out into there. You might want some four-wheel drive to get back out of there again, but I mean, that's a place you could potentially camp, and it's free. You can stay there for quite a while. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's like 30 days or something out of a 60-day period, something like that. But you can use those. I wouldn't recommend it, but that is a place you can legally stay. But here is another place you can camp. It's just another national forest campground. This is actually a snow park, so it's more popular in the middle of winter when it's all snowy out. However, in the off season, you can come out here and again camp. I think it's for like 30 days or something like that, and it's a perfectly legal place to camp. You have to kind of be a little bit careful because a lot of these places, people start doing kind of weird stuff out in some of these areas, depending on how close it is to a city, and of course just the types of people that happen to be in the area. Around here, a lot of these places turn into just kind of gun ranges during the summer. So if you're into that sort of thing, I mean, that's something you can do. I've actually had problems at some of these campgrounds before. The further out you go, I think the safer it is and the nicer these places are, but this one just happened to be close by, so I decided I'd show you what this one looked like. It is beautiful out here, and it's a really nice place to stay. It's just some of the other people that come out here can be a little bit sketchy. On the other hand, it's free. You don't need a pass of any sort. Just come out here and camp all you want. So this is another valid place to camp. These are trailheads. I don't exactly know what's going on at this trailhead, but you got a pit toilet. That's about it. You have to have a Northwest Forest Pass to camp out at these particular trailheads. And in fact, most of the trailheads around here, that's what you have to have. So I don't know how much that is, but just something to be aware of. The other thing you have to be aware of is that it's one night only out here. All right, so let's head back towards civilization and I can show you what an actual National Forest campground looks like. I'm down here at Baker Lake and there is some really good camping around here. So let me show you what the National Forest campgrounds look like. Okay, so this is a typical Forest Service campground. This particular one has a little bit less privacy than most, but most of these have really good privacy between all the campsites. This one just happens to be really convenient to film, so that's why I'm filming it. So here's the deal with Forest Service campgrounds. They're actually really good. Unfortunately, lots of people know that they're really good, so during the summer months, they get expensive and they book up fast. So the way you book them is through reservation.gov. So some of them you can't book ahead of time, you can't actually make reservations. But reservation.gov actually has the information for all the Forest Service campgrounds. Although, to be fair, there are some where the information on there is not completely accurate. But you can look around to find accurate information for all those campsites. So during the summer, during peak season, a lot of those Forest Service campsites, they fill up as soon as the reservation period opens up. And that's about 6 months ahead of time usually, although again it varies depending on the campground, and some campgrounds you can't even make reservations for. So the price of those goes from about $25 out the minimum to about $40 during peak season. But the reason why I like the Forest Service campgrounds the most is because during spring and fall, a lot of them either shut down or become free. And when it's not peak season, nobody comes out to these Forest Service campgrounds. They can be completely empty, and it can be 70, 75 degrees in the fall or spring, and you'll be there by yourself, have a free campground that you can go just hang out at. So they're really awesome in the spring and fall. During the winter, they're good too, but you have to be very tolerant of snow because at least around here, all the Forest Service campgrounds are in locations where they get lots of snow. So that's something you do have to be a little bit aware of. As far as amenities, there are some that have power, but for the most part, they don't. It's just a pit toilet, and that's really all you get. Just really decent privacy. The areas tend to be really well groomed. The park rangers do make sure to keep all the crazies out, and they're just generally good places to camp out at. It's just summer months, they're expensive, and during the winter they're snowed in. So during the spring and fall, those are my go-to places to go camping. They're awesome. So now let's go down and check out a county park. Well, I'm here at Steelhead Park, and this is a county park, and they do have a campground here. So the county parks in Washington State tend to be a little bit on the pricier side. Most of the spaces have power, not a lot of privacy. As you can see, it's mostly intended for larger RVs, things like that. And it's always been kind of my opinion that these are kind of overflow parks for nearby state parks. So if you can't find a campground during the summer months, that's kind of how you end up at a county park. I've personally never stayed at one because it's way too expensive, and at least for the type of camping I do, it's not as nice. I'll put the prices up on the screen here. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm always under the impression that it's actually fairly similar to what state parks charge, and that's why I always consider them overflow, because the state parks are generally nicer and less expensive, and honestly, I think they have a little bit better amenities than these county parks, but there are a number of these county parks around, and they are a place that you could potentially car camp. The county parks are mostly open year-round, and obviously there's some variation between parks, but they tend to really empty out during the winter. This particular park I've been to many times in the middle of winter, and no one is ever here. And that's because they don't reduce the rates like the state parks do, so just basically no one stays here. And I don't think they really have much staff that actually maintains the park in the winter anyways. So that's kind of how they operate. They just effectively close down, although you could theoretically stay here if you really wanted to. And that brings me to the state parks, which I think are really the best for camping. During the summer months, the prices range from $25 to $40 depending on the campground, the particular space, and whether it has power or not. In the off season, the shoulder season, the rates get reduced, and it really depends on the park exactly when that happens and what rates they actually get reduced to. And then in the winter, most of the campsites are either $20 or $30 with power. So for camping in the winter and even the shoulder seasons where the prices are reduced, you really can't beat a state park. When I first moved into my car, before my bus was even done, I stayed exclusively at state parks. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I wasn't really comfortable sleeping on some of these free campgrounds or in parking lots and stuff like that. And so I used those campgrounds, and I started car camping at the end of fall and through the winter. So for probably the first 6 months, I just spent every night at a state park, and they allow you to stay for quite a while at each campground. I think it's something like 30 days out of 60 during the off season. During peak season, I think you're only allowed 7 days at each site. But again, it probably depends a little bit on which campground you go to and all that stuff. So one of the reasons why I like them so much is the state parks, they all have fantastic locations. The views are always good. A lot of them have hiking trails and stuff that you can go wander on, and that makes them completely worth it. All of them have showers. They're either coin operated, token operated, or in some cases actually free. And they're all very private showers as well. They're almost always well maintained. Occasionally something happens with maintenance and it's not great, but they're usually very well maintained showers. And some of those state parks even have showers that you can use that are not part of the campground. And so that's what I actually use for showers, because it's a lot cheaper than getting a gym membership. So that's what I'm doing for now. If I end up traveling somewhere, I may end up going for a gym membership, but I'm trying to keep my monthly expenses as low as possible, obviously, because I'm trying to repay debt. And gym membership is an unnecessary expense for now because I have access to these state parks and their coin-operated showers. So I can't say enough good things about state parks. So those are the general camping options for car life in Washington. There are private RV parks, but they don't generally allow cars, except maybe if you're towing a trailer. Some of those will allow cars with trailers. But in general, RV parks aren't really an option for car life people. And I also just wanted to announce that I'm planning a major trip to go see my family. So if you want to see that, remember to subscribe, and I'll give you updates along in the next couple of weeks about exactly what I'm planning on doing and where I'm going.